think it's interesting how Brahman left the Rings of Power show.
Do you know why?
I'm assuming it's because of all the pushback, and she
No.
couldn't
Well,
handle it.
that's not the answer that was given. It's one of the articles I've got. So we'll. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. That's the one that made me chuckle.
I found out today though that the reason why, one of the reasons, maybe one of the reasons why the Rings of Power didn't use Gandalf and or the Harfoots last year, and I knew about the Harfoots, I just didn't realize about the name Gandalf, um, and why they went with the stranger and wouldn't say his name and stuff,
Yeah.
is because allegedly they would have to rent it out from Warner Brothers.
Ah, interesting. Interesting.
Okay, I'm just gonna do variety. Tom Bombadil
This has to be it, man.
probably is, but there was a quote in there, quite a few quotes actually. Okay, here we go.
You know,
Tom Bombadil finally steps forth in the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, yeah, that's
that
exactly
was it.
what you were telling. Yeah.
Um, you know what's so funny too, man, is like I haven't seen a lot of them, but I think as we get closer to this thing, my feed on TikTok in particular, and I'm sure some stuff will start popping up on YouTube as well. Um, I'm slowly starting to get these people who seemingly are coming out of nowhere talking about how they're excited about season 2. New people. I haven't seen any of the of the old guard that was
Not
doing
yet.
that the last go round. Yeah, no, New Better Do Better. Or the Tolkien professor, was that guy's name?
Yes, the
The one that said that the female dwarves didn't have beards or something like that. Like he was trying to disprove that on
oh,
IGN. Like they
I
had
can't
him.
remember who it was. Maybe it was.
Yeah, I think
I'd
that
be,
was that
I'd
guy.
be, man. Well, if he did, that's
I
yeah. Maybe he did make an argument for
Tom
that.
is Tom Bombadil supposed to be that tall?
I'm more
I
of,
always
I guess in my mind, I've always kind of considered him like a nature version of Santa Claus.
okay, that's fair.
He's
I don't.
jolly
Yeah,
and aloof, but like obviously Tom is aloof, kind of like Treebeard is, just like even more so than Treebeard.
yeah.
Um,
I just for
and
some
I would
reason
imagine him kind of like like short but not tall. You know,
right, like
not
somewhere in between, not like Hobbit size, but not like Aragorn size. Like
yeah, yeah, like
somewhere in
not
between.
like a bit taller than a dwarf, but not as tall as a man.
Right. I guess for some reason I always
Or
just
could
picture.
be like maybe like your average man,
Yeah.
maybe.
I just pictured him closer to Hobbit size. I guess that's more of just like from reading it, like he's living close to the Hobbit, so my thought process is like, well, probably close to that size, you know. But I
I
think
don't
that's
think he
more.
is.
I think that's more just headcanon than anything. Because I was looking at him
I'll
in
say
that picture that they released,
yes,
and I was like, seems kind of tall
and not
and
like
not
Tom
jolly.
Bombadil at all.
Yeah, no, very. He looks more like that the way that they portrayed Radagast in the Hobbit movies a
Oh
little bit, except
gosh.
not as short, I think,
So that would
um,
be that's a good question. I would have to say that
but more like Wild Man of the Woods than like
yeah,
yeah,
Radagast
Wild
design
Wood
and
Wizard.
dude, Radagast design in The Hobbit. Oh man, there's so many things I could talk about hating about that movie. That's one of them for sure.
um,
Ugh. So many people are nervous with Peter Jackson returning because of The Hobbit. I'm like, guys,
yeah,
I'm willing to give Peter Jackson the benefit of the doubt because of everything that went on behind the scenes and how the executives kind of just begged him to come on. He comes on, and then they strong arm him and tell him that he's not going to get the time available to him to that he needs to do production and to do all the things he needs to do. Like Guillermo del Toro had 2 years, and I think Peter was just asking for a year or something like that, and they wouldn't. So he literally created everything on the fly. Now, I say that majority of the blame, the vast majority of it, lies on the Warner Brothers executives. And I don't know the ins and outs of everything, so I don't know how much Peter Jackson was hoodwinked. I just think now Peter Jackson is in a place to where this is a passion project for him. He doesn't need it for the money. Like he has all the Oscars and stuff that you could ask for. Like this has to be purely a passion project for him, and then also going into the projects with the right expectations. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like with things already ironed out, and like being able to pull power for how things go. Now, I'm not sure exactly. I know he's going to be in a Kevin Feige type role. I don't know what that's going to look like for him and how much of this is going to be more of Andy Serkis's influence and Peter. You know what I mean? Like, but I know he's going to be involved in the writing, which is the important part. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, hello to Jake and Zax in the troll room. Good to see you guys. Zax is very, very excited for his favorite show of 2022, Rings of Power, to return.
I heard he's also been
He's a big fan, big super fan of that.
He is, and the Acolyte as well. He's always defending Star Wars.
That tomorrow, right? We're hitting
Dude, tomorrow.
2 episodes.
Every time I turn on the Circle of Jerks, Zax is on there standing Star Wars.
It's not that bad, guys. Also, Zax,
I got a raised tattoo on my lower back.
Zax, I hope your voice is doing well. I was thinking about that the other day. Starting to. Hopefully, you're feeling better, man. I know that was really tough.
I was actually thinking about that yesterday. I was watching X-Men Origins, and where they introduced Deadpool, and he has his mouth sewn shut, and I was like, oh, that's kind of how Zax has been. I hope he's doing better.
Yeah. We don't really talk about that movie or that. It was basically in a canonical way taken out of canon.
What's that?
The whole like X-Men Origins Wolverine thing. Because Deadpool goes back and kills that version of himself in Deadpool 2, I think.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, freaking so we watched from Saturday to yesterday. We watched the original 3 and then X-Men Origins, right?
Yeah.
And
how are you feeling about them so far?
The first 2 I feel like are better than the last 2.
That is the correct answer. Yes, I think like objectively that's the correct answer.
Yeah, like the Last Stand was way too rush. A lot of the deaths were emotionless because it's like, let's just do these deaths. They didn't, not only emotionless, but didn't make any sense as to. There's so much I could go into, but yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Well, and it's also, his name is slipping my mind. Hang on. X-Men: The Last Stand.
You already knew I was going to say the first 2 were better than the last 2.
Oh well, listen, it's a little test. Oh, that's right. His the Last Stand.
David still tests me.
The Last Stand was also directed by Brett Ratner, who is a really, really bad person.
Oh, he is.
Yes. Lots of accusations of the. Of the Jeffrey Epstein
cheese pizza
affiliation.
Stuff.
Yeah. Well,
that's not good.
Not like images, like actual, like, you know.
Oh.
Yeah. Like pretty bad stuff. Yeah. And he's also a terrible director, which you obviously can tell by. Yeah, I remember I think I've seen pretty much every X-Men movie in theaters, except for that new Apocalypse one. I was done. I think after.
Oh, I saw that.
Whatever the one that came. I don't think I saw the. Is that the second time they've done Apocalypse? No. That's the second. No, that's the second time they've done the Phoenix story.
Yes, the Phoenix story.
Well, hang on. No. So Apocalypse. No, sorry, I'm getting my timelines mixed up. Apocalypse came out before the second time they attempted to do Phoenix. But hang on. Maybe I'm getting stuff wrong. It's been a while, man. Those movies really, they kind of had these it's a very like mixed bag. Like 1 and 2 were generally, I think, liked. 2 in particular, though I know stuff changes over times and people kind of like they reevaluate and they're like, But
1 is good. 2 is better.
I liked 3, 1 and 2
especially
at the time. Yeah, 3's not great. X-Men Origins Wolverine is very bad. And then,
I think The Last Stand may be worse than
Origins.
Man, that's hard.
It could be. I think there could be an argument there. There could be an argument there. And then the Wolverine, which is the one where Wolverine goes to Japan, is kind of whatever. Like, people like stuff about it, but it's generally kind of like forgotten,
Yeah.
And then Logan is probably considered like the best. And then you have all of the like stuff that came later. Like they did Days of Future Past, which I remember being good. Except there's a couple things in it that aren't great. And then you start getting into like the new generation, and that one's a mixed bag too. Like I think maybe one of them is pretty good, and then they start progressively getting worse. But it's hard to remember.
Dang, man.
And then yeah, Zach was saying like X-Men '97 is shockingly good, which I just haven't sat down to watch it yet. You remember how we were talking last week about Furiosa and the whole deal where people are just kind of like, I just can't even bother at this
Be
point.
bothered. Yeah.
That's part of it. Though,
Yep.
and I know people will disagree with some of the stuff they had to say. But Red Letter Media came out with the video either today or yesterday about the death of the movie theater.
Ooh, I was gonna watch that today.
Very
or
interesting.
listen to it.
Some of the
I was
stuff in
gonna
there,
listen to it while I was riding in my car, but
it was a little depressing. Regardless of how people kind of feel about them at this point, because I know some of their takes are interesting and maybe a little just like disconnected.
really,
Yeah, they definitely do this thing though and I don't know 100% where I stand. Like there's part of me that agrees with them, but I'm like, I don't know, I could be convinced in the other direction that they're like, it's not just because like, and maybe what it is that they're not understanding the argument fully from, I guess what you would say is like the opposite side of it, because they're like, it's not just because like women are in these roles, right? And that like even if you want to talk about the way that Hollywood is like marketing and stuff, everything we talked about last week, there's
right?
also just a actual problem with like movie going in general. Like theaters shutting down. A lot of people still haven't come back for the most part with COVID, except for like very specific circumstances, right? Like we always talk about like Barbie and Oppenheimer, and a lot of that being the like people come out for these like big events, but like people aren't coming out for like
The Fall Guy.
or ungentlemanly warfare. Like they're just not coming out for stuff that 2019 and before
Probably
it
would have
was a big
made
deal.
decent.
Yeah. And then there's the stuff that we were talking about where it's like Gen Z and everybody coming up, YouTube, live concerts, TikTok, like pick your other forms of entertainment. They're just spending more time doing that, and they're not going to theaters. And then the other thing, and I thought this was probably the most interesting thing that they talked about, was sort of the exclusivity. Oh my gosh, dude, I just had a stroke. The exclusive content,
Exclusivity.
exclusivity. There we go.
There
Golly,
it is.
sorry, y'all. Of like what it used to be like going to the movies. So there was a time when you would go see something like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it might be a year before that comes out on home video. And even then, not only was home video really expensive at the time, but Blockbuster potentially had exclusive rights to that for another extended period of time. Where now The Fall Guy comes out, this $160 million movie, and 2 weeks later, even though it's still running in theaters, it's out on digital. And maybe you do have to pay like $20 for it, but if you're willing to wait and you have like friends, you know, if you got like 3 other friends, you could throw in $5 over Venmo. Someone gets it, and then you have like a little movie night with your friends and drink and do whatever. And you don't have to go to like the stuff that I was complaining about that one time, where you don't have to go to a theater. You don't have to potentially get into a fight with someone about like, hey, stop kicking my seat. You know,
Stop breathing loudly.
Yeah, why is your kid like screaming the entire time? Like the stuff that like, you know, you want to go see a movie, you're paying a lot of money now. And there's some places they were showing the ticket prices. It's like $25 for a single ticket in certain places.
That's ridiculous.
Like it's crazy.
The confluence of factors, though, is basically what it is. It's not like primarily it's driven from, I would say, if you were to do a pie chart and what's the biggest sliver of the pie chart, I would say it's the bad writing, and coupled within that is the agenda, you know, the message. I wonder which one would, if you were to divide that out, which one would proceed and be kind of the number one reason. But then from
I don't know,
there,
man.
it's,
But I guess
you know,
that's
once you have the bad writing and the agenda in there, that affects over the long haul. I think that's had a huge impact
right.
on audiences because nobody wants to be preached at
Exactly.
like
And
that.
you
No-
definitely
Nobody wants to be preached at with the wrong morals.
Mhm. And you definitely can't dismiss that. What I appreciated about what they did is that there were some other perspectives shown
Yes.
in that, which was a nice kind of bit of fresh air, and it wasn't just like, oh, she's a girl boss. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that insight. Um,
Well, I'm excited to watch that because I saw they had posted that and I was like, ooh, that's going to be interesting and
Mhm.
sad.
It was
Because I mean,
because
you're right, man.
man,
Because it used to be like going to the theater was like a treat. I remember going to
yeah,
see, man, one of my favorite memories of going to the movie theater was going to see uh 28 Weeks Later.
yeah.
And I went with my brother Adam, and we went to the last showing they had in Macon, and we were the only ones in the theater. And dude, we had to get out of there at like close to midnight or at midnight or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so we're leaving the theater, dude. And this is Macon, Georgia. I mean, typically that parking lot is packed. We were the only two vehicles in that parking
Oh
lot
my
after
gosh.
28 weeks later. And we looked at each other like, oh no,
Yeah. Uh-oh. That's fun. Yeah, man. I
movie
mean,
came to life.
I've got tons of memories from stuff like that. Like the where I went to high school, there was a theater like right up the road. And so like either because I got off early or sometimes I would just like sneak out and I go spend like half the day at the theater and go do like double features of just like whatever happened to be there, you know. And so you're
Yeah.
still getting pricing. I'm kind of trying to remember, but like prices were so much cheaper back then, you know. But then like going like with people that I worked with or friends over the summer, like just going to see every blockbuster that came out and then like talking about them with people afterwards. Like kind of like what we're doing now, just you know, it was more of a like a get together kind of thing.
Mhm.
Just all sorts of great memories of doing stuff like that. And now it's like, I mean, I don't want to get too depressing about all of this, but like it's just not the same anymore. Like
It's really
um,
not. Well, you don't get to see the Harry Potter nerds dress up anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
they got rid of midnight showings, like all of the weird stuff that's going on with like you know, I think some people have been deterred because like the potential like I say this even though I think statistically it's really low, but like with like shootings that have gone on in theaters or sometimes even just like the cleanliness issue I think is a problem for people now. I It's weird. I didn't think I would get to this point, but the like the gimmick factor of those like quote unquote comfy chairs has kind of worn off.
Oh yeah.
Like even going to see Furiosa, like that faux leather stuff or whatever, like you move wrong and you're a little sweaty and it just sounds like you're farting in the theater. Um,
You don't have to blame it on that, David.
yeah, I know, right? I mean, hey, that theater food will get you. But man, it's just like it was weird. I'm like nostalgic for the semi uncomfortable chairs, you know, where you'd have to
Not me.
instead of having like the rented out seats now, like you used to have to get there like way ahead of time to like save an entire row for your friends. Like you try to get as many people to go as possible. And it's crazy, man, because I was thinking about this too, because you know Marvel's not in a good place. DC is more than likely not in a good place with this reboot that they're trying to do. You don't have these tentpole these what I would call like guaranteed tentpole franchises anymore. Because I was thinking about it, and it's like, who knows if we're going to get another Barbie movie or when we're going to get another Barbie movie, and like, is there
I
going to
think we
be?
probably will with Deadpool. I think Deadpool will probably hit
I could see that,
close to 1 billion,
but like,
if not 1 billion.
but that's the thing is like, how few and far between are these going to
'Cause
be, right? Like, it's not.
It's tracking half of what Spider-Man No Way Home did, and
Okay.
half of what Spider-Man No Way Home did, and Spider-Man No Way Home was a $2 billion movie. So
it
if
can
that
hit
holds
hits a
up,
billion.
it could theoretically hit 1 billion.
We'll have to see.
But I mean,
and dude, it also depends on word of mouth on that. Because if people go and they're like, it's not that good,
yep.
it'll completely fall off.
Oh yeah, well I think too. It's like Marvel's gonna think, "Oh, we're back." That's gonna be their advertising
No,
pitch, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like,
it's
nah, you just
yeah.
you'll
This
find out soon enough that
ag-
you're not.
yeah, it will more than likely be an exception to the rule. And that's
Yep.
what I'm saying is like Marvel's not in the place that it was. It's not making these movies where every single one of them is basically a massive success. Like they started to get on that really good roll, and they didn't know how to keep it up after Endgame. Regardless
Yep.
of what you and I or anyone else thinks of the actual quality of those movies, like if you're just looking at it from that money perspective, that stuff's not there anymore. So when you're talking about all year long and like trying to get butts in seats in the theater, no, there are no massive franchises right now.
Yep.
There are some that
There's
are like
not.
pretty good, right? I mean, like the Kong stuff was still doing okay, but who knows how long that's going to last. But there is nothing that's like guaranteed at this point. Like Marvel's
Dude,
not
and it's
guaranteed,
weird too
DC
because
isn't.
you talk about Kong, like Godzilla versus King Kong actually doing well at the box office is surprising, and then you have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I forget what their budget was, but they've made 337 million. Now
Uh,
they're not banking on that to be only 337 million, and this is also not adjusted for inflation as well, which makes a big deal. But that's better than I thought it was going to do. But the budget for that movie was 160, so it still hasn't even broke even.
yeah, neither is Furiosa quite yet. Though it's staying.
So I guess it really hasn't done.
We'll
Like it had a
see.
big opening weekend, um, or a decent, I should say, opening weekend. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, but it's crazy, man, how movies has faltered. I like what Zach's
Yeah.
brought up though, that with the high prices, they can't afford to disappoint you at the theater, and so they're ruining it. They're ruining the next movie that they release.
Yeah.
And that's the deal. Is like eventually you start having all these misses at the box office, and people get tired of spending such a high dollar
Yeah.
to go. It's not the same like it used to be, but
It
hopefully,
just yeah, it
you know,
really
with it becoming more decentralized, hopefully things can get figured out. You know,
I think like if just to borrow the phrase, like I'm very like black pilled in the short term, but like
Yep.
we've talked about, I think like long term, I think there's a lot to be potentially excited about, or to see the way that things could go and what people do. I don't know. I'm like I can't imagine, and maybe this is just me being like out of touch with like the next generation a little bit, but like how far does like TikTok go? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when do people kind of get to the point where it's like that is just
gonna take a while, man.
it kind of moves on. Yeah, I mean
'Cause
like that's kind of guess
it's
what we
more like
thought.
a search browser now than anything.
Yeah, that's what I've
Like,
which is
it's replacing Google, which
yeah,
is
which
why
is
they wanted to
interesting.
ban it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the other thing too. Is like, is it just going to get completely forced out or turned into another, uh, another, like,
Napster.
yeah, well, like someone's going to buy it out and then try to use it, and then that's going to ultimately be what kills it. Because like anything Google touches at this point seems to die. Like they
Yep.
can't. There's just like a lot of, and I don't know, man. Like maybe that's just
It's
kind
only
of
the owners of the company keeping it up, the CIA.
yeah. Maybe that's part of it. Is like we're just in a time period where everything's pretty, from like the mainstream perspective, like everything's pretty creatively bankrupt. At least that's kind of the way that
Yeah.
it feels to me. Even Planet of the Apes, man, $160 million budget.
Yep, and it has only done
337
million.
So it's like right there, but like man, they would probably say it's a success. Wow, it made its money back, but like that's not enough, especially for something.
No, it would
big.
have to make.
That
I
might.
want to say it have to make around $500 million to potentially break even.
Yeah, man. I mean,
Yeah, I would
that's
say
the thing.
between
It's like
400 and 500,
they,
400 and 600 million.
we talk about this. Like, I feel like we talk about this every week now. But like, what was the one that there was a movie that they? Oh, that movie that I really liked from last year. Talk to Me.
Yes.
$4.5 million budget. How much did it end up making? the number was kind of. I mean, it's impressive for like something like that. Made 92 million.
Oh, that's good.
That's
And that's what
very
it's going to
very
be.
good.
These indie movies, man.
So and I don't know, man. Like it's tough because it's hard. I think the quality isn't always there. Like I don't know how for every like talk to me that's in that price range. I bet Abigail was more expensive.
There's others that are misses.
Yeah.
But I really do think the indie
Searching
scene could
it
make a
up.
good impact and start, balancing things out.
Man, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, man, we got some. Dude, Bad Boys is gonna
Because outs,
bomb.
yep, outs.
So
The only other
gorgeous.
movie I think that could potentially, that will, do really well is going to be off the top of my head would be, um, War of the Rohirrim this year. But all the
Yeah,
like major movies got pushed to next year anyway, so there really wasn't anything that big releasing this year.
but I don't know.
I think one of the things with the Marvel movies that I wonder if we could look into this and get the data on this, if they help propel other movies as well, because so many people were tuning into, um, the Marvel movies and when they released and this and that they were probably getting ads and, when they went to the movie theater seeing these other movies and like, oh, I'm gonna come back and see this. You know what I mean? Because I'm
Yeah,
having such a great experience.
yeah. I mean, well, to be honest, I mean, even with like we had talked about it a little bit last week, but like Furiosa, there were a few trailers in that I went, okay, like, yeah, maybe I'll check that out. Um, but I don't know, that's me, right? Like, I'm not. I,
Zax
what
says,
did you
I
say?
want to believe in the war of the Rohirrim too.
Yeah, me too.
I really do.
I hope it's good. You know. Um,
We'll see.
yeah, I was just looking through some of this stuff that's coming out
The
soon.
it has the I think I said early in the year when we talked about it that I'm slightly concerned because like Helm Hammerhand's daughter is like briefly mentioned and I think she's gonna be the lead. And I'm like, oh,
Mm,
hopefully it's done right.
yeah. Oh, hi Jenna.
Yeah,
Sorry, we were talking about Lord of the Rings and we went off on
we're gonna get back
we
to it
went we
though.
went on a tangent, but it was a necessary tangent, I think, because
It was.
yeah, man, it's weird. Like I'm so curious what's gonna happen to theaters over like the next 10 years.
I did. Oh, well, not to sidetrack along that same
No,
vein.
you're good.
Do you prefer, if you had to choose one,
Hmm.
would you prefer a really good movie or a really good TV show? And if you want to balance it out, you could say a really good trilogy versus a really good TV show. Which do you prefer?
Oh, dude, this is what I'll say. Where we're at right now, I want a and this is very like shooting for the stars. I want a comparable trilogy to Lord of the Rings. I don't care what it is, right?
Right.
I'm ready for, and I don't know. I the time might be past, like we may just, and it may not be something that we see for a very long time. Um, but in my like deep inside, like what I desperately want is to be back in a time where we are not, maybe even not comparable. That's what I really want, but like just stuff that like Christopher Nolan in his heyday, right? Like back when it was like, dang, like we're getting a Christopher Nolan Batman movie at like every other year basically, and we're getting something that's like that he is like from his own mind. Even though he's even gone some weird directions recently, right? Like that just I don't know, seems
Right.
to happen with directors when they get older, but like that like golden age of stuff like that, which has been
So,
a
but if you
long
had to
time,
choose
man.
between a really good movie or a TV show, what would you prefer to watch?
Part of me wants to say TV show because there's just more time to develop, but there is something about a really tight movie
Movie.
script
Yes, there is.
that's hard to beat. I'm not done with it because like it was like we were talking about before the show, but I'm like perpetually tired these days. But I started Serenity last night, and I plan on finishing it after the show. And that movie's so good. Like I miss when people like cared. Like when
Yeah,
it just doesn't. Oh man. I that's what I miss, because like everything that comes out now just feels so like, it doesn't even have to be the same genre, but it's like all the blockbusters feel very samey to me. Like not everything's kind of
there's no creativity.
it's paint by numbers in those. I mean, you know,
Very much AI scripts
yeah. I mean,
like Atlas.
we've we've talked plenty about. Yes, I'm old. It's true. Or I'm getting there. I feel old sometimes when it comes to some of this stuff, where it's like feels like it's been going on for years now, and I just desperately want another trilogy that makes me feel the same way that like Rings of Power. Oh Lord, that like Lord of the
Yeah, you
Rings
do,
does.
don't you?
But like,
The
man,
truth
even
finally comes
I
out.
know, right? I secretly love that show. But even Indiana Jones or the original Star Wars movies. I mean, they're not either. To some degree, they're very much in a similar vein, right? I mean, I think the the Lord of the Rings movies are just something that are very, very, very special.
Yes, they are.
And
Lightning in a bottle.
I think that at this point, the original 3 Indiana Jones movies and the 3 original Star Wars movies fall into that category too. Because like we just aren't, like, we don't have anything, man.
Yeah.
I don't, I like Batman Begins, and the Dark Knight's excellent, but it's weighed down by The Dark Knight Returns. Wait,
Right.
is it Returns or Dark Knight Rises? That's the last one. Sorry, I've only watched it a couple.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, I've only watched it a couple times. Uh, yeah, and Zax is right. Serenity had strong female characters that we cheered for because they were great.
Yeah, they're great characters.
Shooting.
The same thing we talked about this with Arcane.
Yeah, and River has like, there's a reason that she is as strong as she is. Like they actually,
There's nothing wrong with strong female characters as long as they're written well.
Yeah, and it's
and at
simple.
least in my understanding of what I'm talking about, not their version of strong female character.
Right, and it's simple, man, because like with River, it's like, yeah, the government experimented on her, and she's basically some form of super soldier, and so she is able to like fight dudes that are bigger than her, and she's also like nimble and quick, and like it's convincing, which is a big deal, right? You have to make it convincing, and then a lot of the other women that are in it are strong in their own ways, right? So it's not all just about like their physical strength. Some of them are smarter, some of them use guns. There's a lot of that goes on in there, and it's like we just don't get that anymore, and not even with just like the perspective of like the strong female character, which at this point there's really no reason to try to argue with people who are on the other side of that, because it's like they just keep changing the topic almost. It's like no, it really means this or that. It's just not worth it anymore. To have that, and River is also not. She's not like a girl boss. Like she's basically mentally ill because of the torture, right? So like that's part of it, is like she is incredibly strong, but she's not stable. Like she's not
weak.
Yeah, there is that.
She has weaknesses.
Exactly, which is something that you don't get. And man, I could talk about that for a long time. We're gonna do a Firefly Serenity arc at some point. We're gonna talk about those.
Speaking of weaknesses, the Rings of Power has always been weak.
Oh yeah, man.
The TV show.
And like this
get into it.
Yeah, because I mean, and this is what we've talked about forever. But everything in that, it's like crazy coincidences. She finds Sauron floating in the middle of the ocean. Like it's just like,
and she jumps into the freaking Atlantic Ocean on one side and swims completely across the Atlantic Ocean on her way to Valinor. The funny thing is that in the opening scene of the first episode, you get to see the map from Valinor to Middle Earth. Almost said the Middle East. Good night. The Middle Earth. And you get to see the vast distance that it would take. And this freaking girl just like was like, you know what the best decision is? to jump out of this boat
Yeah,
and
right.
swim back because I don't want to go to Valinor and kill myself. Well, that may get self-delete myself. Excuse me, YouTube. But
Um,
I mean, they're really. I mean, we talked about it last year that they were just going to double down on everything and think that they're better
and
than the not only Professor Tolkien, but Peter Jackson, and that's what you're getting with this Tom Bombadil bullcrap.
yep.
Is they just think they can do it, and there's a reason why. Out of the major adaptations of the Lord of the Rings, Tom Bombadil was not included because he's essentially. And I know hardcore fans are gonna hate me saying this, but he is useless to the storyline. I mean, with the exception of the hobbits finding the swords, and specifically the one that allows. It was Mary, right? Am I right? Troll room that it was Mary that stabbed the Witch King, or was it Pippin? Always get it mixed up. But and it was because of the sword that was able to, as Tolkien said, sift soul from sinew, or basically tear apart the soul, right, and
Yeah.
and separate it. And that's why the Witch King was able to die. It wasn't purely because of it was Mary. Um, it wasn't purely because of Eowyn. She had a hand in it, but it was also Mary. And specifically it was Mary and his sword that allowed the Witch King to be killed. But when you read Lord of the Rings, you get there and you spend like multiple chapters in the Old Forest with Tom, and it's great. I really enjoy the character of Tom Bombadil, and it's not like his character may be useless, but that stop into the narrative probably could have been shortened significantly to where
I think if we were to I'll speak for myself. If I was to have like any criticism of those books, it's like the Tom Bombadil stuff is sort of like it is very it's just odd. It's odd.
Yeah.
I would say from like in the same way that it doesn't make sense to put it in the movies, it's odd from like a pacing perspective. Where you're like,
that would have killed the
okay,
movies.
yeah, like, okay, we're going on this adventure. Oh, by the way, we have to stop and talk to this guy who is completely, well, you can argue this, but like, he seems to be pretty insignificant to the plot overall. He's just like, he's kind of there, and it's like it's kind of lore, it's like lore heavy. Like he could have made that, I don't know, like something that was part of like, the short stories, and still made it something that happened to them, but you just take it out of the book for editing's sake.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like, still to the fact, like, they're putting him in this. And, like, everything that they're going to talk about with this dude is going to be made up.
Yep.
Like, coming from the perspective of someone who doesn't know a whole lot, he is there to specifically be like, someone had the bright idea to be like, we're putting Tom Bombadil in this because it's like, oh, like it's one of those things that like all of these like quote unquote lore masters or whatever, they're like freaking out now, like, oh, Tom Bombadil, oh my gosh, like we're actually getting more of him. He's gonna be in the show. Like I know that name. And they're gonna make up stuff or completely assassinate his character in some way or another.
Well, they're already doing that. Like every time I see modern sci-fi shows, it's like because, and since stereotypically women are good with aesthetics, specifically interior design, I'm gonna be a bit stereotypical here, but it's like once that muted, pale like aesthetic got popular, almost every single show starting to adapt that. It's like if Joanna, I don't know, Joanna Gaines is just the one that comes to my mind. Like aesthetically, it may make sense, but this is not lore wise. It does not look like Tom. His blue is supposed to be bright blue. He's supposed to have yellow boots. His hat's all wrong. Like just there's so many different aspects to approach this from, to where it already doesn't look like Tom. And then on top of that, he's jolly, singing and everything. So you would think, it goes back to the Superman release with James Gunn. You would think if you're going to release, if this is going to be your first promotional image of this character, you would want it to look more lore line as possible, right?
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna do it, if for whatever reason you are gonna do it, you'd think that you would find the point in Lord of the Rings where they specifically talk about him, the way he looks, and his personality, and have an image from the show that is very specifically that.
Yep.
And this, you're right, it's all wrong.
Especially with how season 1 went.
Yeah, man,
But it's like
I'm with you
they
on this.
just didn't learn their lesson.
I'm with you on this muted colors thing too. This is very much reminiscent. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a time in video game history where everything was like this, like diarrhea color aesthetically.
Oh, yeah.
Gears of War. I'm trying to remember what else was coming out around that time. Gears of War is the one that sticks in my head the most. Even stuff, I love this game, but like Spec Ops: The Line was like it was different shades of like green and brown. It was just Fallout 3. There was a lot of that going on, and it's funny that you had mentioned the whole like muted colors thing, because you're right, it's everywhere now. And we talk all the time about how it's like, man, it would be honestly, it would be really great if someone at this point would be like, let's brighten things up a little bit, you know?
Yep.
Even something like, I think Game of Thrones could implement that in a way that it's like, man, there are these like very vibrant moments in the show that is like all about civil war and death, you know? That like those color profiles like juxtaposing each other could really add something interesting if done right. It would have to be done right. And don't get me wrong, I'm all good with where House of the Dragon is currently, except for episode 9 or 8. 9.
Yeah.
8? I don't remember. The one where she murders all those people.
Oh, episode 9.
That's 9. Yeah, so there's stuff like that. But yeah, man, I mean, my only knowledge of Tom Bombadil is from those few chapters in The Fellowship.
And here's the thing. I really enjoy him as a character, and I think if there was a way to adapt him to fit him in, I would definitely enjoy it. You know, if Peter Jackson and crew would have been able to do it, it would have been cool to have a nice little, you know, pit stop to where you get to see Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, because you know, just the whimsical nature of Tom and his aloofness and how he doesn't care about the ring. And it's very much like a bright picture in this dark world, so to say. Not all of it is dark, though. And I'm really hesitant with, obviously, as we saw last season, good reason to be, but especially with this season, going to be more darker and grittier. And it's like, guys, this isn't Game of Thrones. This is high fantasy.
Yeah.
Keep the high fantasy aspect. It's not like you can't have dark tones and everything. I think that Peter Jackson brought that home, and being restrained in using the horror elements in Lord of the Rings trilogy, while remaining faithful to Tolkien's high fantasy view. But with this article on Tom Bombadil, J.D. Payne says, is it J.D. Payne or is it Patrick McKay?
J.D. Payne and Patrick. I'm sorry, I was reading through a little bit of this.
Is it J.D. Payne? That's his name?
Yeah, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay.
Okay, because I forgot. Good. I wanted to erase Rings of Power out of my memory, but there's a reason why he hasn't, speaking of Tom Bombadil, Payne says, there's a reason why he hasn't been in prior adaptations. Because in some ways, he's sort of an anti-dramatic character. Then why are you writing about him and putting him in your story?
And he's not an anti-dramatic character. It doesn't, it's like I just said, it doesn't work for the adaptations because it messes with the pacing.
Yes.
Like if you were to do, and we've talked about it before, I think you could probably still pull it off if people were really bought in. But if you were to do a very faithful adaptation of the books, like just beat for beat, I think people would be on board with it because they know it's build up, right? They know what's coming. In the same way, like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, people are pretty bought in, and they're like, okay, I'm on board. A lot of people probably, they already know where it's going. So Lord of the Rings already has that essentially like built-in favor of, if you were to do a very faithful adaptation in the form of television, and you were going to do the Tom Bombadil stuff, like just all the way through, the chapters that's basically just Treebeard in the forest. If you were going to do stuff like that, you could definitely make it work.
You
Um,
could,
and I
but
think people would be okay with it. Like, but this isn't that, you
no,
know?
it's not that. And on top of that, I think people may be okay with it, but I think you would still have to shorten it up. You know, like make it
Yeah,
truly a pit stop where you're like 10, 15 minutes in there and
maybe.
then
Yeah,
out.
you could the biggest problem I think.
Just for the pacing, because you don't want to spend. I mean, like, man, it's chapters and chapters and chapters you're in.
Yeah, you would definitely have to cut some of it. And it would be like, I think it would be a whole episode, and then you know how, like, is it? Forgive me. Is it before or after they meet Tom that they get lost in the woods? Doesn't he save them?
Yeah, he does save him. But I think is that. Yeah. That's when. Dang, it's in the Barrow Downs where they get the swords, and I think Tom saves them twice
Okay. Well, either way,
from
like,
Old Man Willow, and if I remember
yeah.
correctly, and from the Barrow Downs.
And so you would have to essentially, you know, people, I don't know,
You would
people might
think
be
after reading
upset.
those books like five,
I
six,
know.
7 times, I would remember something.
It
But
hasn't been that long. My timeline for the events in those chapters is just a little unclear. But essentially, what I'm getting at is that the episode about like Tom Bombadil would essentially have to be like they meet him, it's interesting, they leave, they get caught up in a bad situation, and he saves them, and like that's the episode. You know what I mean? Like it would. You're right. It would have to flow a very specific way, but you could definitely have an entire like one, and it's very much like a fan service to everyone who is in love with the books. And I think in the right hands, which again, in the right hands, could work out well. It's a single episode, and then you're moving on from that to continue the journey. There's probably a good bit of like lore building that you could do in that as well, and like a way to make Tom interesting. In a way that's like potentially memorable, but then you're not spending so much time there that it's not like that episode of The Last of Us where
yeah,
you're with Bill, and then like he's completely irrelevant to the rest of the show.
the show,
You know, because that's the problem that you like. People might like it, but then you
you
go,
don't want to
man,
get too campy.
yeah, it's like, man, that episode was like completely worthless because Bill never shows up again. You know,
Yeah, and yes, Axe, Tom does sing a song completely about himself. And I think is
got to
that when
leave the
Frodo
song in
puts
if
on
you
his
do it.
ring too to try to escape, or maybe like as Tom was singing the song, he puts on the ring and it does nothing to him. He just doesn't care about it. But Payne continues, and he says he's not a character who has a particularly strong agenda. He observes drama, but largely doesn't participate in it. Correct. In the Fellowship of the Ring, the characters kind of just go there and hang out for a while, and Tom drops some knowledge on them. Correct, for the most part. Knowledge that's not particularly relevant to anything that they're doing or about to do. I'd argue that. But my whole point is if this is how you feel, why do you think, with what's written about him, that you're going to be able to do it and put in the Second Age, and they're setting him in Rune too, by the way, which, if you wanted to have a very, very extremely liberal definition of what's spoken about in the canon, um, Tom being a wanderer, you'd have to be very generous to make the offer. But Tom didn't go to Rune. He's always been in the Old Forest, is what's pretty much indicated in the lore. So it's like if you're going to introduce Tom, not having him already, like, oh my gosh, it's so simple and they make it so hard, David. Why wouldn't you just do it in the Old Forest if you wanted to put him there
Yeah,
in
you
the
just
show?
figure it out.
Like, put him where he's at and with
Oh,
Goldberry.
dude, their plan is probably maybe they just have like an easier time with Tom Bombadil, so like he's like a recognizable character. There,
It's
dude.
total
So
fan service. Like,
he's
we need
gonna
all the help we can get.
and like he's borderline OP, right?
Yeah, like he's, some people think he's Eru Iluvatar, which is the god of the universe, which he's not. I kind of think he's just an offshoot of the Song of the Ainur, and when he was just a good character that was made,
Yeah.
being that was made from that. But there's a
Was
lot of
yeah.
mystery surrounding him, and he's really just a character based off of his children's doll, and was only created for his Tolkien's children.
Gotcha.
But yeah, to think that they would be able to adapt him right, I mean, like Payne goes on to say, he can be a force for good, but he is challenging to integrate dramatically, and that he doesn't have an agenda. Yeah, he's completely aloof to what's going on in Middle Earth. He does not care. That's why the ring has no effect on him.
Mm.
Is because it's not because of Tom's power level. It's because he just doesn't care. He's like Treebeard, but even more so not the interventionalist.
Right.
Like he just doesn't care. Like
he has
Gandalf
no
made it a point
interest in
during
that.
Gandalf made it a point during the council to say in the Fellowship that if we gave the ring to Tom, I would be afraid that he would lose it.
Yeah.
That he doesn't care so much.
Yeah. He'd set it down somewhere or whatever and be like, whatever, and then it would find its way elsewhere.
Man, yeah. But yeah, so I have
boy.
no like he already doesn't look right. What's wrong?
I was reading this part where he says Tolkien himself was hazy about the character's purpose and said he kept Bombadil in the story even though he didn't have a clear purpose plot-wise. Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative, Tolkien wrote in a 1945 letter to his proofreader. I suppose he has some importance as a comment. I mean, I do not really write like that. He represents something that I feel important, though I would not be prepared to analyze the feeling precisely. So, like, they're just going to do whatever they want with him.
Yeah, they are.
Whatever
really
they want.
It really is.
Get ready, folks.
These are one bomb, so we need to put in a character who's going to make noise, although this really isn't making that much noise for them because the show sucks so bad.
Yeah, people just aren't that interested. You know how there was, like, weird tree magic stuff happening in that trailer that we watched?
Oh, yeah.
I bet it's him. I bet he's
we'll see.
I bet he's Forest Magic Wizard. And that's what he's gonna be. It's his like oh man. I'm so curious. I'm so curious about how they're like most of it is like the characterization stuff. I saw one article, I may have pulled it up. Screen Rant was saying that Tom Bombadil in the Rings of Power Season 2 furthers hints the stranger is Gandalf. I haven't actually read it. I just thought that was interesting.
That's funny.
Can be dude, they're just recycling a lot of the same stuff. I don't even know if you know how Screen Rant is.
Oh yeah,
that's going Season 2. Blah blah blah. Sounds like the show will follow books portrayal of this character, at least, and then Bombadil has never been. Oh, dude. Live action before, and if the stranger is Gandalf, it would be incredibly significant to see the two Rings of Power characters meet on screen. Oh, so Screen Rant's big analysis of this, and that the stranger is Gandalf, is because it would be cool to see the two of them together on screen.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all they
even
got.
Though that it specifically states that Gandalf never went to the east.
Bro, how sometimes I hate the internet. Sometimes I hate the internet, man. Get out of here, Screen Rant. We're done with you.
And then Payne goes on to say, we know he cares about the natural world and we know he's a helper. He's not going to push you, but he will help you. And so traditionally, he lives in a place called the Withywindle. Now, David, if you're going to talk about lore and you're going to talk about Tom Bombadil and stuff, you know what the Withywindle is? It's the river outside of the Old Forest.
Oh, right.
The Old Forest is the place that he lives in.
Mm-hmm.
And they call the Withywindle an enchanted forest. No, that's the Old Forest. So again, it's like they don't know what they're talking.
Whatever, man. He has legs. He can walk. He can go places. He can do whatever he wants.
They continue and say in our story he has gone out to the lands of Rune. Never went there, which we learn used to be sort of Edenic and green and beautiful. Okay, but is now sort of a dead wasteland. That is true. Tom has gone out there to see what's happened as he goes on his various wanderings. Tom doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But, oh gosh,
I don't. Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, it's gonna be very it's gonna be whatever they want, and that's what this. If you're like kind of read into some of the stuff that they're saying, it's very much in the vein of like, well, there's not much said about him, so we can kind of interpret it however we want because that's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, his boots aren't yellow. His jacket really isn't blue. It's supposed to be bright blue.
If this picture,
he has a long brown beard. His eyes are supposed to be blue and bright. his face was red as an apple, and it talks about this in the article. And he had a feather in his hat. And again, it's
If I don't know if you can see this on the stream, but is
gosh,
this him on the left over here
let me see.
in this other first look
Yes.
with the okay.
Yes,
So like he's just in like this white,
plain clothes.
yeah, and he's frowning, dude. Is he? I don't know how many pictures they have in here.
And this stuff matters.
my-
Like people often
He's
say,
not,
like,
dude. He's not
what if?
smiling.
Why does it matter so much if they change? Like, it goes back to the curtains argument. What does it matter if they change the curtains from blue to purple? And my argument is, why does it matter that the creators changed the carpets from blue to purple?
Right.
You know what I mean?
He's not smiling in any of these photos. They talk about him being this fun, whimsical character. And none of these photos, he's just frowning. He could literally be anyone, dude.
Too serious. And again, maybe he doesn't end up being that way. These are just promotional images, you know? And that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get these shots
But it's
in the show.
like
But it's for a first impression.
right.
It's like, guys, it goes back to marketing, right? We were just talking about
Uh-huh.
that with Furiosa and these other movies. If you're going to market this stuff, be smart. And this just goes in the article when he misnames Tom's home to Withywindle, which is actually the river, when it's actually the Old Forest. That is the Enchanted Forest. It's literally called the Old Forest. They don't know what they're talking about. It's just that simple.
Right. Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't know.
But can't wait to see that bomb. Because it's going to bomb.
Yeah. We're creeping ever closer, man. I mean, like the Acolyte is coming out soon. House of the Dragon's not too far off. I gotta sit down and actually watch season 1 again of House of the Dragon.
Yeah, I plan on watching that. Let's see, season 1 or season 2 starts next week, right?
The 16th.
Yeah, the 16th.
So we're
not this Sunday, but the next Sunday.
Right.
So literally 2 weeks.
And then so we're and then it's not much longer after that this starts. So it's gonna be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and watch the season 1 again next week.
But yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else you wanted to say about Tom Bombadil? I have just like a couple more.
That was it.
Okay. So let's see, what else did I have? Okay, we don't need that, and we don't need this. Let me hide this real quick. Okay, so I just real quick. They released an image of, is it Adar? Right, he was the evil guy that got
yes.
The actor got replaced. So they released this image of him, which we kind of saw in the trailer. But I thought it was really interesting that they're going this direction with him now. I guess my theory about it, they pretty much, they have to keep him in the show. They got a new actor, but they're like hiding the actor, so it's just vague enough that if you're not paying close enough attention to the show, you might not know that it's a different guy.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was kind of interesting. It's like, and at least they're like replacing him. It's like one of my like main. It's like a gripe that I have all the time with television is where a lot of the time they'll just either like off screen or whatever, they'll just like kill off a character instead of giving the audience the benefit of the doubt and being like, well, we're just gonna recast him. I feel like the last time that was done in like a major thing is from like Iron Man 1 to Iron Man 2.
Yes.
And then the Hulk, obviously, but that one was a little less big, I think. But yeah, I mean, they don't do a lot of that, and usually they just make up these like convoluted whatever because the characters couldn't come back or the actors, had other like obligations.
Right.
And I've always hated that the way that works, and I get that it happens, but. I just thought that was interesting. I mean, there's not a whole lot to this. I mean, they're basically just talking. How these articles are so full of nothing a lot of the time.
Yes.
They're basically just
fluff.
they're just like recapping stuff about who the character was, and then like the new actor, and you're just kind of like, I mean, obviously we don't really care all that much about what they're as far as like the details of what these people are saying about their roles, because it's kind of completely unimportant to what we end up getting a lot of the time.
Yep.
Like entertainment, the Hollywood Reporter, a lot of these places, it's just fluff pieces, basically advertisement for the show. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. Don't really care for his armor. I don't think his makeup really looks that bad. At least he's got long hair and pointy ears.
Right.
It's like
There was some stuff that was said in here. I'll try and find it, but that caught my eye. Let me see here, actually. You can keep talking, though. Once I find it, I'll let you know.
cool.
It's like he talks about, I
here's
know it was
another
something
one.
to do with like their creation.
Oh, I
And
don't
it's
like
like,
this.
that's not how
This picture doesn't look as
that
good, I
works.
don't think. That orc does
Okay,
not.
so
That orc looks terrible right there, dude.
oh yeah, he did. I'm glad that you noticed that as well. I thought the same thing earlier when I saw that,
I don't know if it's the lighting,
or
because
just the
it's like
design,
set
but it
photos. It just, I
looks
don't
like an orc
know.
that's filled with gout. That's
Yeah,
like
like it's
waiting
just,
to burst.
yeah, he just, yeah, it's almost silly more than it is like frightening. What an odd. This is all very
But
odd to me. Huh.
so later on in the article, it says this: there was an offer for power and for something else. This is the actor talking about Adar,
Yeah.
talking about the um, creation of the elves, right, or the orcs, which you found out later on in the show, which you'll find out later on in the show. And Adar willingly took the deal. It's kind of like he took a red pill and was duped. He was horrifically
No
tortured
way.
and maimed. Oh, the red pill. We
Oh,
gotta
yeah.
say the red pill. But no, that's not at all how even the dark elves, even the elves that, gave Morgoth information, they never had any empathy, or it was never for power or for something else. Um, it's not how Morgoth made the orcs in any of the versions Tolkien wrote. Um, they were all kidnapped. Morgoth and his orcs mutilated and tortured them, and created, or excuse me, I should say the orcs. Morgoth, excuse me, just mutilated and tortured them to the point to where he created a new form of being in the depths of Entumo, and the Rings of Power showrunners are like, well, what if it was actually the elves' part, and in their pride, they did it for their lust of power? That's what this reeks up, and it's like,
Yeah.
good night, man. Like even Maedhros, who was like tortured bad and maimed, he still killed orcs when he had any chance. And Maeglin as well, he was also um, tortured, and he was the one that gave up the location of Gondolin, but he still didn't. He didn't share any sympathy for the orcs.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So again, it's just like, you could talk about Huron as well. He was tempted to despair, but he was never tempted by Morgoth for evil or corruption. It was like Morgoth never offered an elf a place by his side. So, yeah, weird. Just odd to include that in there when it doesn't line up again with the lore.
Well.
It breaks a lot of canon.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're
Par for
gonna.
the course.
Yeah, it's gonna be the same thing that happened last time. I'm gonna constantly be like, Joseph, this feels like it's not accurate, or why does this feel like they just made this up? And you'll be like, it's because they did.
And they suck.
So I've got one more article to talk about.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it because it goes on for a little bit more, but I'm only reading the first like quarter of this. So unfortunately, Joseph, and I know you're so disappointed about this, a series regular from the first season of Rings of Power is not coming back. Nazanian I tried. I should have looked up her name beforehand. Forgive me, ma'am.
Oh, 90.
Yeah, Bonaidi, who played Bronwyn in the show's first season, won't be in the upcoming episodes. A source close to the show exclusively confirmed. Bronwyn is a human healer who was the mother of Theo and had a forbidden romance with the elf warrior Arondir. Fans noticed Bondi's absence from the show's teaser trailer, which has racked up, just so you know, 13 million views. And they're not going to tell you how many downvotes it has, but they'll tell you how many views it's gotten.
Oh, speaking of which, I'll give you an update on that.
Okay. She recently wrapped filming an indie film, A Mosquito in the Ear, the feature debut of Nicola Ranisari, and an adaptation of the Italian graphic novel. Now, here's the kicker, right? Bonaidi previously posted on Instagram that she took a step back from acting to focus on Joseph. What was she focusing on?
Activism.
Yes. And it just goes on to talk about that and her
That's hilarious.
activism.
That's pretty much spot on. It has 546,000 downloads.
Wow.
And it's probably more than that. It's typically less than that. Or excuse me,
It's
it's
typically
more
quite a
than
bit
what they
more.
go.
Yeah.
So it's probably closer to like 800,000 to a million.
Maybe a million. We'll never know because we'll probably never get the dislike button back because YouTube is kind of sucks because of that. Oh, dude, yeah, they have to keep everyone's fifis from getting hurt.
Yep.
Even though it's so funny because if you go into your creative center, you can still see the number of downvotes.
Yeah.
You just can't see them on the actual thing. It's so stupid, dude.
It really is.
Yeah, man, I just thought that was so funny. That
is
she
pretty
basically is not coming back to Rings of Power. I mean, good for her for finally actually doing the thing.
For true passion.
Yeah, that true passion, unlike a lot of these other people in Hollywood who just like, they're like, I'll do it through my acting or my writing or whatever. And it's like, eesh, please stop. Anyway, I thought it was a good way to potentially close out the show, but
I think so. I wonder if that's really the truth or if it was the pressure surrounding the show.
Well,
that got to her.
man, it could have been one of those things where she was like, this feels like a sinking ship, just like the guy that played Arondir, because I guarantee you that's why he left.
You mean Adar?
Adar, sorry, not Arondir.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that played Adar, he's like, nah, I'm good. Because people say all the time, it's like, well, they're under contract or blah, blah, blah. It's like contracts can be broken.
Yes, they can.
And if you think that it's going to tank your career that badly, like if I was him, I would figure out I would wipe that show from my Internet Movie Database page. Like it wouldn't be on anything. Like I'd just be like, nope, don't know what you're talking about. That's not me. No, I was not in that show.
That's hilarious.
Oh man. But yeah, man, that was the only other article I had. I just figured we hadn't done a week where we kind of just talked about some articles and took a break from the critiques of the movies and stuff.
Yes.
I don't know. Like
next week we'll be critiquing Acolyte, only for a week, thankfully.
Man, yeah. Well, it is a dual episode, so get ready for that.
Oh yeah, I know.
Oh man.
Oh gosh.
I'm gonna probably try to bite the bullet tomorrow if I can stay awake.
A real bullet or a metaphorical one?
Metaphorical in Minecraft.
If you get too depressed in Minecraft, just let me know and I'll send you words of encouragement.
9mm prices on 9mm are going down though. I was looking at it today.
On Minecraft? That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's they've
my guns
dropped.
got lost in a boating accident.
Yep. Yeah, it's nice because the prices on that stuff were getting real high there for a little while.
Speaking of things going down today, I don't know if you saw, but for 10 minutes, was it Berkshire Hathaway and some other companies for like 10 minutes on the stock market lost like 99.9% of their valuation. So,
whoa.
Yeah, dude. So like it was an error apparently somehow, but Warren Buffett's net worth went from like $35 to $36 billion to a measly $1 billion.
Yeah, measly.
Yeah. Uh, and then people, who were, doing the stock market saw it and tried to jump in on it, and were buying shares and stuff, or trying to, but they all got canceled.
Yeah.
But if you would have spent $500 on Berkshire Hathaway stock market during that 10 minutes, stock price, excuse me, during that 10 minutes in the stock market, and when it went back up, you would have had $10 million.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
If they had let you, right? But they canceled.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I remember seeing some errors on some of my apps a couple of years ago with stuff like that, where it was saying that my accounts were like stupid, like went stupid, and I looked at it though and I was like, this is a mistake. It's like, there's no way this is real,
Yeah.
But everyone, that's kind of, it's so funny, but it's almost like what you hope for sometimes, right? It's like, you're like, okay, well, I've been smartly investing or doing this or whatever, and then like you wake up one day and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
But it's rare, man. I mean, I don't want to say it's all rigged. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but like
But it ain't the most honest.
Yep. I can't remember the name.
Somebody created,
Who was
I don't know how accurate it is. I thought about putting some money in it and just to see, but somebody created this app called Autopilot. And it's a politician portfolio tracker. And basically,
interesting.
They will do, like, you just choose your politician, and whatever they do, you'll get the same, like, they'll make the same purchases for you in the stock market, or they'll sell. So they'll buy and sell based off the politician.
I heard about that. That's interesting. I feel like that could go south if you're not careful.
Maybe I'm just gonna do what Nancy Pelosi does.
Yeah.
Tommy, you gotta know the right ones, which is pretty much all of them.
Well,
it's really,
it's
like,
timing too.
All of
all
of them are beating the what was it, the past, like, however many years the stock market's been, like, at 10% each year.
They're way over it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like beating it tremendously.
Yeah, if like you have a portfolio with someone, you're like kind of guaranteed that 10% increase a year, but all of them are significantly over that. And it's like, there's no way it makes sense that like Nancy Pelosi is doing that well. Or any of the other ones. I mean, like, you look at how they are with like the country's money. It's like, okay.
How are you this bad with the country's money, but this good with your personal money? It just doesn't make sense.
All right, Joseph. I think we'll cut it there.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for joining us for another episode. We will be back next week talking about, I guess, episode 1 and 2 of The Acolyte. I don't know if we'll do like full breakdown stuff, but I'll probably record the episodes. There's probably some really interesting things to discuss in the episodes
and laugh at.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. I need another one of those Princess Leia running away from those those kidnappers scenes.
Dude! Before we go, when I was watching, I can't remember. It's got to be the second. It's when Stryker dies, and that happens. Does that happen in the second movie? Yeah, the second movie.
Yes.
And he captures Magneto in the plastic room, and he goes into the room, and everything's plastic, right, except for his glasses. It's just like overlooked.
Yep.
I'm like, those glasses have to be metal.
Yep. Yeah. More than likely they were. That's funny.
Yeah. But anyway, we can end on that note.
On that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen, and neurodivergence, we will be back next week with episode 175 of The Underground, talking about The Acolyte. Will it be good? Will it be bad? Probably bad, but
yes,
hold your
breath.
Safe
to say.
In anticipation. And until next time, y'all take it easy.
See ya.